Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World Water Day webinar, Water, the SDG and COVID-19, Challenges and Opportunities for the SDG 6, hosted by the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, UNU-IAS, in cooperation with the Global Environment Outreach Center and UN Water. This webinar has two components. One is the opening and keynote, followed by a dialogue session by companies, academia, and international organizations. During the session, please feel free to throw any questions to any speakers using the Zoom question and answer function, and we will try to address as many questions as possible. We hope you enjoy, and let us start. We'd like to invite the first speaker, Dr. Shinobu Yamaguchi, Director of the UNU-IAS, for a welcome remark. Over to you, Dr. Yamaguchi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to this World Water Day webinar on the topic, Water, the SDGs, and COVID-19. Organized in collaboration with the Global Environment Outreach Center, GEOC, and UN Water. We are very much delighted to have on board experts from academia, the private sectors, and international organizations to share the perspectives on challenges and opportunities for water on this important occasion. The 22nd of March has been the World Water Day since its declaration by the United Nations General Assembly in December 1992. The day provides an occasion to highlight the importance of freshwater resources and inspire the people's action for water. Each World Water Day has a specific theme, and this year, the focus is groundwater, making the invisible visible. Groundwater is out of sight, under our feet, but its impact is visible everywhere. As the impact of climate change intensifies, groundwater becomes more and more critical. We need to appreciate and protect this precious resource and work together to manage it sustainably. Today's webinar aims to foster interdisciplinary dialogue on this challenge and how it may be met in the context of overcoming a global pandemic. By doing so, we wish to promote multi-sector partnership, not only for SDG 6 on water, but also for the other SDGs, which are fundamentally interlinked with water. Without doubt, the pandemic has affected our lives in multiple ways. In addition to this direct impact on public health, it is definitely affecting natural resources, including water, in complex and evolving ways. In fact, in some locations, for instance, decreased investment in water and sanitation facilities might have compromised access to safe water and sanitation. In other locations, such as industrial areas, water quality has improved as the economic activity declined during the pandemic. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, I am today participating from the middle of Mongolia, visiting after 2.5 years of pandemic, and definitely I am experiencing with hands-on that air quality and water quality has improved after the pandemic. So viewed in this way, the COVID-19 crisis could bring not only challenges, but also some opportunities. The very agenda that we will be exploring in this webinar. We will discuss actions that the private sectors, academia, international organizations, but also other sectors can take to transform the COVID-19 challenges into opportunities for the SDGs. Linking this discussion to the theme of World Water Day, we will consider what this means for groundwater in times of crisis. The session will also highlight the importance of science for evidence-based planning for water. Now more than ever, we need to prepare for future scenarios in which economic activity rapidly recovers and competition over water resources intensifies. As an institute dedicated to policy-oriented research and education, UNU-IAS is advancing knowledge and solutions for sustainable management of water. We will be presenting today our research project on water for sustainable development, which has provided tools and scenarios for water allocation and pollutant discharge under different level of economic growth. In concluding my remarks, I thank you all again for your participation and look forward to an active discussion that will share knowledge and further develop collaboration on water and SDGs. Thank you very much for your attention and please enjoy the webinar. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yamaguchi, for the background and context to the event. Now I'd like to proceed to the keynote by Dr. Professor Taika Naoki from the University of Tokyo, who was also a former Senior Vice Rector of the United Nations University, talking on the impact of COVID on water and SDG 6. Over to you, Naoki-sensei.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Yamaguchi-sensei and Emi-san, to introduce me. So this is Taika Naoki, and I'll talk on the impact of COVID-19 on water and progress toward SDG 6, the water target. So you may see my face on the video a little creepy color because that I'm accessing from a hotel in Dakar, Senegal, where the World Water Forum 9th has been implemented, and details will be reported from Ken Fukushi, who demanded me the very difficult talk combining the COVID-19 and water and the groundwater together, integrated manner, but I will try my best to share something with you. Okay, first, maybe that the new report from the WASH by UNICEF and WHO will update these numbers, but so far what we know is safely managed drinking water and sanitation services. That, for example, 771 million people still lack even basic drinking water service in 2020. And bad news is since 2015, the number of people without safety managed drinking water in sub-Saharan Africa, where now I'm in, has increased from 703 to 766 million. So that it has been declining, but recently it started to slightly increasing in sub-Saharan Africa. And also 1.7 billion people still lack even basic sanitation services in 2017. So such a statistics takes time, and Indian government are very much proud that they made a lot of efforts to provide sanitation services in their people, and hopefully this number are decreasing a lot. And 494 million people still practice open defecation, and 55 countries still have open defecation rates above 5%. So it's water and sanitation are not only the matter of the health condition, but the dignity and right to get the education, and also that the gender equality, that the women and men can work together in the society. And let me remind you that what's happened in the MDGs era. MDG is the Millennium Development Goals, summarized in 2001 to make the better of the water situation, and 7.C was halved by 2015, the proportion of the population without sustainable access to safe drinking water. And as you see that in 1990, that base year, that world population was 5.3 billion, and 1.3 billion. 1.3 billion has no access to safe drinking water, so that the proportion was 24%. So the MDG target on water was to reduce the 24% to less than 12%. What's happened is, in 20 years, that the population increased to up to 60.9 billion people. However, that people who has no access to safe drinking water reduced to 0.7, so that before the target year of 2015, that MDG target on safe drinking water was achieved 5 years earlier than the target year. And I was wondering why it could be achieved. And nobody gave me a convincing answer, so that my student, they're very smart one, surveyed. Firstly, we thought that, okay, making these contributions from the international organizations or the local activities to develop the water supply supported that the decreasing that the people who has no access to the safe drinking water. Yes, it is, but on the macro scale analysis, what's happened in reality in the world was like this. So here you see that each arrow in this figure is each nation. And the starting point arrows of the arrows are the 1990 figure of the GDP per capita and access to the improved water sources ratio. So that all the nations, except for a few nations, like Burundi or Congo, that most nations from 1990 to 2015, that they had economic developments, and also that ratio to have access to improved water sources have increased a lot. In particular, India and China, between 1990 and 2015, their economic development was remarkable. And the ratio of the who has an access to safe drinking water increased tremendously. And their population shares 1/3 of the world population, so that their contribution was very much. And what we learned from that MDG 7C are like the target was achieved for the first time in the long history of global targets on drinking water. And there is some criticism that indicator, not by their really safe or not, cannot be assessed on that easily. Therefore, that the access to safe drinking water was assessed by that the facility type is that the protected wells, or that they have the piped water system, and water quality was not really examined. So that there is a criticism that the numbers overestimated who has an access to safe drinking water. And also that there is a criticism that the target itself was not so ambitious enough, like the how, why not 90%? Why not nobody will be left behind? So that the issue is there, that if you have a target to halve the who has no access to safe drinking water, from which community do you start to make the situation better? If you are the governor or the president or the prime minister of the community, then you will start from the easy communities that to be improved. But in reality, that for those who really needs that help, is for more difficult, the people who are very much difficult situations, but they will be left behind if the government or the international organizations or NGOs would like to make the situation better to achieve the halving the target. So that in English, they call it low-hanging fruit. So if you're asked to pick up some apples or oranges from tree, from which fruit do you start to pick them up? So top of the tree or the low-hanging fruits. Of course, low-hanging fruits are much easier for you, and you can achieve your duty within a limited time. But as I told you that we have to save the people or support the people for under most difficult situation, so that from the lessons from the MDGs in SDGs, so we say no one will be left behind. Do not be satisfied with the achievement of the housing target or even 90% improvements target. And as I told you that with the China and India, that the target could not be achieved. And progress in drinking water supply target will continue to be closely associated with economic development and poverty reduction as observed during the MDG target period 1990 to 2015. Then, based on this narrative, what's happening now? And do we see any impacts from the COVID-19 on the SDG 6? This is the report released last year. And for safely, this is drinking water, that the safely people who has a safely managed facility are increased from 2015 to 2020 from 70% to 74%. Safely managed sanitation facilities 47% to 54%. That's good. And how about the basic sanitation? It's also increasing. So it seems from this report that the water target SDG 6 has not yet been impacted or from that COVID-19 situation. So can we be very optimistic about this or not? Well, let's see other figures. For example, this is the impact of COVID-19 on hunger. Sorry, that the title is wrong. That is GDP, actually GDP growth, and the annual growth rate of real GDP per capita annual growth rate of real GDP of least developing countries 2000 to that 2022. So these are the world's global average, and these are the least developed countries. Of course, that they have that space to improve their situation so that their growth rates are higher than the global mean. And well, they had a slight or the deep decline of their GDP growth rate, so that we should anticipate that, okay, maybe that the access to safe drinking water could be eroded in 2000. And if it recovers well in 2021 and 22, maybe that we can cover up this drop in 2020. Well, about that, the impacts of COVID-19 on poverty, it could be serious. So that the number of people living below 1.90, that the extreme poverty day has been declining, but the COVID-19 has led to the first rise in extreme poverty in a generation in 30 years or 40 years. So it has been decreasing, but due to the COVID-19, so that that people under the extreme poverty are now increasing. And by that baseline, this is the baseline projection, but forecast, that this is the forecast before that COVID-19. Now that we have the baseline projection like this, or that the downside, the bad side of projection, we expect more people will be under extreme poverty in 2020. And hunger is serious as well. So the COVID-19 is pushing rising rates for hunger and food insecurity even higher. So that also that these people under this extreme on hunger, undernourishment, people has been decreasing, these two lines are that this is the number of the undernourishment people, this is the percentage. And both has been decreasing, and since 2015, the number is slightly increasing, and we are worrying about it. But due to the COVID-19, the situation becomes worse. So this is the bad news, and maybe that we should concern about that the water access as well. Could that people who has no access to safe drinking water or sanitation or the hygiene could have an increase due to the COVID-19. Okay, then what's could be a upside of that COVID-19 on that something like that climate change? Yes, there were. And here is the carbon dioxide emission from energy combustion and industrial processes since the beginning of the 20th century till the last year, 2021. And in 2020, that the global carbon dioxide emission reduced by 5.2%. However, recovery was much, and 6% more than the drop increase from 2020 pushed that the carbon emissions related energy combustion up to the 36.3 gigatons. So here are the pros and cons. And according to that, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, so still that the nationally determined contribution says it's much higher than what we should follow if we'd like to achieve that the global mean temperature rise lower than 2 Celsius degree or 1.5 Celsius degree with a limited overshoot, or the below 1.5 Celsius degree. So that even though there was a big drop actually, however, that recovery was also very big, and we still have emission much larger than we should have. And owing to that the heavy precipitation over land or the agriculture drying regions that will increase in the future. So I think that I don't have enough time, so I will skip somewhat. And today's another theme was about groundwater. So I'd like to share a little bit about that global water resources model result estimates. So this is the HOA, so-called HOA model, which have the both natural water cycle and human interventions on that water cycle together as a numerical simulation model, and which can assess the available freshwater resources, which a region are now under the pressure of the water scarcity like that, including the facilities like canals or the groundwater recharge processes, local reservoirs, groundwater abstraction or desalination facilities or return flows. And these are the results estimated published more than a decade ago. And this color indicates, the greenish color indicates that the crop growth is mainly supported by the rainwater called green water, but the bluish color indicates that the crop growth are supported by the either irrigated water or from the reservoirs or the medium-sized reservoirs or even the fossil groundwater, which has no recharge right now. And there are some regions where the fossil groundwater that less circulating groundwater are used. And one of that is this border or Indian Punjab or India or near Pakistan. And that region, from the satellite, NASA group identified a lot of decline of the mass of the Earth's surface, and that's correspond to the mainly groundwater depletion. And the numerical model that HOA coupled with the land surface model estimated a similar depletion of the groundwater in this region, so that evaporation water can be more than precipitation because it has the discharge from upstream, and also the pumped up groundwater can be evaporated, so that even from the atmospheric circulation data set, we can identify, oh, this region, the precipitation is less than evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration more than precipitation because that they are using water from upstream and also water from the groundwater. And such that we do that the irrigation to the field. And this is the latest report from released last August from the IPCC, and how that the carbon dioxide or the methane are warming the earth. But here we have land use, reflectance change, and irrigation. Actually, we are converting that forest into cropland, so the reflectance becomes higher, so that land cover change is cooling slightly the earth. And also that we are putting the water to that if human being doesn't exist, that surface should be had a higher temperature because it's dry and absorb the solar radiation and return the energy back to the atmosphere. However, we are putting the irrigating water so that surface temperature decrease due to the irrigation. That effect is not, of course, that the major elements among the various human activities, but not negligible. So that we are modifying the surface temperature not only by the greenhouse gas emission, but land use change, and also that the water intervention, anthropogenic water activities changing that climate. So that remarks are here. So the COVID-19 should have been putting impacts on SDG 6 through economic and social development, and synergies among climate actions, build back better from COVID-19 and sustainable development should be promoted. And we need to reduce number of the key commonality among these, or that need to reduce number of people under vulnerable situation. And sorry that I a little bit run to tell you that the information about water-related anthropogenic activities are causing unintended changes on the Earth system, and we are modifying the climate change not only through the greenhouse gas emissions, but through the agriculture or the water activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oki, for an impactful presentation, starting with the lessons learned from the MDGs and assessing the impact of COVID, not just on water, but also on beyond. Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to invite the next keynote speaker, Dr. Tomochika Tokunaga, Professor of the Graduate School of Frontier Science of the University of Tokyo, talking on the role of groundwater for SDG 6 in times of COVID-19 crisis. Over to you, Dr. Tokunaga.
Okay, thank you very much for your very kind introduction. And let me first share my screen with you. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the title, yes, I received the role of groundwater for SDGs in the COVID-19 crisis. But today I, in principle, plan to share the basic information on groundwater and request the audience to think of how groundwater contribute to SDGs in the COVID-19 crisis. Okay. Anyway, as Dr. Yamaguchi mentioned in this opening, the theme of World Water Day this year is groundwater. And the subtitle is the Making the Invisible Visible. Yes, as you know, the groundwater is invisible. Then why? So let me start from that part and then move on to the several topics which I have indicated here. Where can we see groundwater? What are the characteristics of groundwater and its behavior? How does groundwater respond to abstraction or pumping? Maybe this part is one of the important messages I have prepared for the audience. Sometimes we have misunderstood the groundwater resources evaluation, and that partly, at least partly, come from the less well understood situation of groundwater response to the abstraction. Then move on to the how we can use the groundwater under emergency situation and what kind of preparation we should do for the anticipated or actually unanticipated emergency situation. And I would like to conclude my presentation. Okay, groundwater is quite often mentioned as our hidden asset because groundwater is invisible. And right-hand side of this slide is a brochure published by British Geological Survey some 20 years ago. The title is Groundwater, Our Hidden Asset. Groundwater is usually reserved, the term groundwater is usually reserved for the subsurface water existing beneath our surface. So that is hidden and invisible. And this invisibility affects a lot how we view groundwater. The importance of groundwater is quite often overlooked. And it is a hidden asset out of sight and out of mind. However, as we have recognized groundwater can be one of the important water resources for us. It is because groundwater exists on our foot quite ubiquitously, even though the subsurface structure is quite heterogeneous. So sometimes it is not easy to abstract groundwater, but as long as we know better the subsurface situation and we do better engineering, it is quite often possible to obtain water from subsurface. And another important part of the understanding of groundwater is around 99% of Earth's liquid fresh water. And it plays an important role in the water cycle. Right-hand side of the figure is the famous one, which I borrowed from Vital Water graphics prepared by UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. Our Earth is in salt water, the planet of salt water, saline water. 97.5% of water is saline on Earth, and only 2.5% of water is fresh. And among these, 2/3 is in solid water ice, and rest, 1/3 is fresh, liquid fresh water, but almost all the liquid fresh water is made up of is groundwater. And another important point from groundwater scientist engineers perspective is that rivers, lakes, and wetlands, these are surface freshwaters, are actually the surface manifestations of groundwater. And these lakes, wetlands, and surface waters exchange between groundwater. And exchanging flow with the groundwater reservoir that feed them when they need water. And groundwater takes some of the water when surface water is in excess. So groundwater and surface water are exchanging. So groundwater is not an isolated system. So that is another important thing. When you consider groundwater, you need to consider both surface water and groundwater simultaneously. And these are the examples where we can see groundwater. Springs and oases and wells are the places where we can see groundwater. And this is a typical spring discharge where groundwater discharges out to the surface. This is another example of spring discharge. Last week, I had a chance to go to Okinawa and took this photo. And this is another example of spring discharge. And dug wells are the ones which we quite often use for getting water from subsurface. And in some cases, fresh groundwater directly discharged to the sea from sea bottom. And that is called a submarine freshwater groundwater discharge. And this amount of freshwater discharge to the ocean is sometimes important for both freshwater resources discussion and also mass transport from the terrestrial side to the ocean. And as I already mentioned, groundwater is in part of the water cycle. And this is in the famous water cycle figures prepared by United States Geological Survey. And groundwater exists in subsurface, and from the groundwater point of view, groundwater receives water from surface water as an infiltration or groundwater recharge. And groundwater stores water in subsurface. And sometimes groundwater provides water to the surface water system, showing these arrows as in groundwater discharge. So again, groundwater is not an isolated system and considered as a part of the water cycle. And this is a kind of natural science point of view of understanding groundwater. But in addition, our activities quite often affect the behavior of groundwater. This is a little bit busy figure, but this is an example of how human activities affect a water cycle and water budget. The left-hand side figure is a Google photo of the river Shogawa here and river Oyabegawa here. And this river Shogawa is known as a losing river system. Losing river system means that the river water flow decreases as you go downstream. That means river water is recharging groundwater. On the other hand, river Oyabegawa is gaining river system, meaning that as you go downstream, river influx increases. That means groundwater discharges to the river and increase the flux. And here, in between this river and this river, there is the paddy field. And the Ministry of Land, one of the Japanese ministries did a water budget calculation estimation and indicating that the groundwater recharge is rather large. The value is similar with the precipitation or the precipitation in the area. The part of the reason is because of this paddy field irrigation. If this paddy field irrigation is not conducted here in this area, groundwater recharge can be much smaller than the value estimated by this study. So this is indicating that the possible importance of human activities on the groundwater behavior or the water system in the watershed area. And one more thing which might be important for thinking about groundwater is how fast groundwater flows. And this can be very fast. In some cases, this can be very slow. On the left-hand side figure of this slide, again, comes from the vital water graphics by UNEP. And this is showing what is called residence time of water in variety of different reservoirs, starting from biospheric water, atmospheric water, rivers, swamps, and groundwater. And groundwater, the residence time of groundwater is estimated to be 2 weeks to 10,000 years. So this is the very interesting characteristics of groundwater gain. And the figure shown in the center and right-hand side is the estimation of groundwater flow velocity based on the age determination of groundwater. And right-hand side of the figure is groundwater flow from Mount Fuji to all the way down to the Mishima city, where the groundwater discharge is observed. And in this groundwater system, groundwater flows extremely fast. Estimated velocity is 16 meters per day, while the figure in the center is the estimation from the Artesian Basin in Australia. And this results in the 10 centimeter to 40 centimeter per year of groundwater flow. So depending on the setting, groundwater can flow very fast and in some cases extremely slow. So we need to have a good understanding how groundwater behaves in subsurface depending on the precipitation condition, the recharge condition, and subsurface aquifer conditions, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's move on to how we can obtain groundwater by pumping. And the figure here is showing the water budget prior to the development, groundwater development, and during the development. Prior to this example comes from the High Plains Aquifer in United States, and before the development, natural recharge amount is estimated to be 24 million cubic feet per day. And because this is steady state condition, discharge is the same amount as the recharge. Then it is quite often supposed that the sustainable groundwater abstraction should be the value which we estimate from natural recharge. But the reality is quite different. During the development of high plains aquifers, we can pump 830 million cubic feet per day from subsurface. So, as written here, the amount of pumpage can exceed the amount of natural recharge in the basin. And it actually has exceeded in this example, and it quite often happens. Why? The water come to the well from these three sources. One is decrease in stretch, and one is increase of recharge, and the last one is the decrease of the discharge. So the natural recharge condition cannot give us how much amount of water we can abstract. Rather, the change, temporal change in stretch, recharge, and discharge are the ones which we need to understand to think of the sustainable groundwater development. So this is a very famous statement in our field by John Bredhoft, hydrogeologist in USGS. They mentioned that perhaps the most common misconception in groundwater hydrology is that a water budget of an area determines the magnitude of possible groundwater development, and it is called water budget myth. Another way of explaining this is source of water to well is three. One is storage depletion, and other is change in recharge, and the last one is change in discharge. And we combine these change in recharge and change in discharge as a capture. And as you can see in the right-hand side of the figure, once you start pumping, first water comes from the stretch. And by pumping up this stretch, then storage start to deplete. And that change the groundwater flow pattern. And it tend to extend the area of the effect of groundwater level table changes and start to receive water from the outside, in this case from the stream. And this changes the recharge discharge conditions, and that water finally comes to the well. So this central figure is showing the horizontal axis is time, and vertical axis is fraction of groundwater pumpage. So initially, groundwater or the pumped water comes from the storage. 100% water comes from storage, and it tends to decrease, and the capture increases. So this kind of temporal change should be understood by us. So, okay, then this figure is showing how capture changes as a function of time. Yellow one and brownish ones are the places where groundwater moves vertically down as a function of time from 1945 to year 2000. And you can see the pattern is changing spatially and temporally. This is the situation how we temporarily and spatially changing groundwater usage in Tokyo and its surroundings. And this is again how groundwater system has responded to our activities. So we need to understand the system's behavior of groundwater and surface water interactions. And this is the reason why we hydrogeologists model. And we need to apply the modeling approach to better understand the system's behavior for groundwater when we use groundwater as a resource. Then how we can prepare for the groundwater usage under the emergency situations. And around 10 years ago, UNESCO IAH issued one textbook, Groundwater for Emergency Situations. And this is the topic of this textbook is to consider the natural catastrophic events that could adversely influence human health and life, and to identify in advance emergency groundwater resources resistant to natural disasters, and that could replace damaged public and domestic drinking water supplies at that time. And the topics included in textbook is these things: flood-prone area, drought, earthquake, volcanic activities, landslides, tsunamis, and storms. And maybe we need to further consider the unexpected catastrophic events, such as the spread of viruses, the war, that could further adversely influence our health and life. And that could replace damaged public and domestic water supplies. We may need to think about drinking water and also the water for sanitation. And this is an example of how we work for the emergency situation preparation in one small island in Tokyo. And this island, we anticipate the tsunami to attack, and this affect the local residents. And this is the anticipated inundation depth. And we did a numerical simulation how groundwater is affected and which part of groundwater is survived for possible usage of groundwater supply just after the tsunami event. As you can see in the bottom part, south, even though groundwater is highly affected by seawater, this colored area is seawater affected areas. There are still freshwater exist in the southern part of this island, and we can use this water for the post-recovery processes if we prepare properly beforehand. So we suggested this kind of situation to the local authority to prepare them for the possible tsunami event, which will happen very near future. Yes, I'll finish my presentation by the final slide. So this is a kind of takeaway message, and groundwater is a part of the water cycle, and it interact with surface water systems. So we need to think about both. And groundwater usage affects the system temporarily and spatially, and we need to apply the groundwater modeling. And at the same time, the model is not a perfect representation, so we should acknowledge the limitation and combine the monitoring and the modeling studies. And we need to encourage the involvement of stakeholders, and we need to be proactive to consider the emergency situation, which often happens unexpected manner. And I'm sorry, my talk is a little bit longer than yes. But anyway, thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tokunaga-sensei, for contributing to making groundwater visible, the topic that we don't always have a good knowledge of. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'd like to, yes, thank you so much. Now, we'd like to invite Dr. Kensuke Fukushi, our academic advisor at the UNU-IAS, and is also a professor of the University of Tokyo, for the World Water Forum update. Sensei, over to you.
Thank you. Just to check whether I'm okay. I'd like to make a very brief presentation on the World Water Forum. What is going on there? It just started yesterday, and as mentioned by Professor Key, there's numbers of the presentation, discussion being held, and that including Professor Oki's session. This is actually their entrance. It's very difficult to say where the entrance, but this is part of the entrance of their venue of their World Water Forum. You can see this, in the World Water Forum, their website is 9th World Forum, which was 1 year delayed, held in Senegal, Dakar, Senegal. It's actually a suburb of Dakar, Senegal. It was planned, a long time ago. However, due to COVID-19, it is kind of postponed by 1 year. And this is actually figures on their website. They acquired, there are 30,000 projects, 5,000 contributors, and 30,000, participants, which is a little bit doubtful for me. Anyway, there's a lot of people who engaged for this meeting. This is just a snapshot of part of their program, which is a 4 days program. This is yesterday's in the morning presentation. Their session is their big auditorium and medium auditorium, and then there's a room, but there is no room. I would like to explain why this is a room. But the Professor Oki session in here, this one F3 and room 5, 100 seats. This is a snapshot of one of the hallway, and this countries, the booths, and then there's a red carpet, to invite VIPs to the conference, but they're considering African climate, the weather, this red carpet is not really functioning so well. It's very slippery. This is the main hall, one of the main, their medium-sized hall, and then there's a presidential, it's a ministerial meeting is happening yesterday afternoon, and then actually many people, for this, the high-level meeting, many people participate online. However, a majority of the speakers is present in the Senegal, the conference hall. Actually, this is a so-called breakout session, pro sessions. This is the room, there. It is not physical, it is a virtual room. I was wondering, why their World Water Forum, 9th Water Forum is not discouraging online participation. Each people having a headset, I think next slide, in headsets like this, and then their speaker does not have microphone. They have microphone, but it delivers voices. only the participant who has a right channel to the designated session room. Sometimes that's through their translation booth. There's a bunch of translation booths. And sometimes their official language is English, but there's almost, of course, being Senegal, there's a lot of French presentation is being held, and there's the simultaneous translation. So next room you can see here, and there's like 10 different rooms, in a big auditorium. But there's a pros and cons. If you forget to take this headset, and if you do not, set channel in the light one, you are not able to listen the presentation of their panelists. So in the first day, it was some confusions. This is, I'm sorry, this is old resolution. Professor Oki's is a session, he's making a presentation, and their session is they're very popular, and people are packed, I was before I attend to this conference, I was a little bit skeptical that not many people attend on site, but really I feel people's strong motivation to deliver something on site, and have a very discussion on site, face to face with their stakeholders, with their specialists, with their well-known politicians. There's a lot of face to face modality is getting back. This is an exhibition site. There is a very interesting booth created by different countries, different stakeholders, different their private sectors, starting from Japan, Morocco, China, Mali, Senegal, Portugal, Spain, Republic of Korea, Indonesia, Swiss, Belgium, the French booth, each booth has a very different organization. And, they're having a different focus on their water related, their issues. This is Japanese booth, and this is our UNU-IAS, their poster, which is a little bit, in a way casual, sometimes too casual, having a little bit, more kind of encouragement to make Japanese booths more, attractive. That's what I really felt. In the Ninth World Forum, I have only attended half day yesterday. So next 4 days, I'll keep attending it. My presentation is there after tomorrow. However, I feel really passion and energy. I understand COVID-19 is the main theme of today's World Forum. And of course, we very much careful about, their our hygiene, their precaution about the COVID-19, this vaccination or any sanitization or wearing masks, maybe 50%, of people. So, we are very careful. However, beyond, this COVID-19 pandemic, we really feel the passion and energy of researcher and stakeholder who have motivated to deliver, their outcome, and to have interaction, with other people. Is really feel that, Another things that the World Water Forum, apart from the other, water-related academic, the meeting is very inclusive. Not only just academic people, stakeholders, including their NGOs, private sectors, their government officials, and in other, their different level, and of course United Nations, agencies, are very much, they're kind of they're making a discussion very flat, no hierarchy in the discussion, and then we try to understand, their way of thinking, what their system of governance of water, and the various issues has been discussed and will be discussed next 4 days. And this inclusiveness, they're really being kind of direct, linkage to their diversity, and diversity of people, nationality, languages, and standpoint and the viewpoint of political issues, the diversity. Without having this diversity, we cannot implement this inclusiveness manner of meeting. And that is maybe they're delivering the passion and energy of people who are attending the World Water Forum. Water management is very important things. They're discussing main theme. How we they're discuss about water management, water resource management, various issue, and water business, water. By seeing the lot of private sector participation, water is important. It's very important public services. However, on the other hand, this is also a chance of business. Business is not always bad. Of course, business is good. Because self-motivating, self-running, the system, then entire systems of water, it's going to be properly managed. However, we have to understand that not everything is their monetary value, not really like money making, so that business itself, it may not be stand as it is, but the role of the government, the role of the private sector, the role of the NGOs, or citizen group is going to be a little bit in backupping this water business, so that their entire as a globe, or region, it stands as a sustainable water management, water resource management system. Finally, what is the benefit? What are the fruits, out of this discussion? This is a very important thing. Water is for all, not only for developing country people, not only for developed country people, not only for private sectors, not only for government. We need water. We need a good water environment. This is an asset, common asset, or common. There is a local and global commons of their entire globe. By showing this, their last figure, I'd like to thank everybody, but I spent like 2 hours from their parking lot to the registration desk. We have to walk a long way in a very hot weather, very strong sunshine. But after all, we had a very good glass of beer at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fukushi-sensei, for the live report. And it's good to know that the forum is going well in Senegal, and looking forward to more outcomes from the forum. Thank you so much. So now we'd like to go on to the dialogue session, talking on the role of a private sector, role of science and education, and of international organizations for the achievement of SDG 6 in the COVID-19 crisis. I'd like to give the moderatorship over to the facilitators of each session, first by Dr. Hashimoto. Over to you. And when you are done, you can give the moderatorship to the next moderator. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. So hello, everyone. My name is Takashi Hashimoto from the University of Tokyo. I'm very much honored to moderate this session, the role of private sector for achieving SDG 6 in the COVID-19 crisis. So today, we invite two fantastic panelists from private sector. Actually, both are very much active on the front lines of water business. So then one of the panelists is Dr. Yasuhiro Matsui from Yokogawa Electric Corporation. He's a manager of the Innovation Center, a marketing division at Yokogawa Electric Corporation. Now he's involved in the research and design of water reuse facilities in the United States. And actually the water reuse is one of the hottest issues in the area where freshwater resources are scarce. And the other panelist is Dr. Koichi Matsubara from Nihon Suido Consultants. He's a deputy general manager, overseas water supply development consulting headquarters. Then his expertise is wash, water, sanitation, and hygiene in Asian and African countries. And he has a significant experience in planning and design of water supply infrastructure. Okay, so here I'd like to ask both panelists to briefly introduce their activity towards achieving the water SDG. And after that, we'd like to have a discussion on the challenges and the countermeasures for achieving SDG 6 at each field. Okay, first of all, I'd like to invite Dr. Matsui. So, okay, so if you are ready, could you please start?
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Hashimoto, to the very good introductions. And also thank you for inviting me to the United Nations Universities for the World Water Days. I present on behalf of Yokogawa Electric Corporation. what our challenge and the opportunities for SDGs Goal 6 as a private company role. Okay, go to the next page. Okay, so this is Yokogawa's corporation's profile. We have over 100 years histories and 374 billion yen, equivalent to the 3.5 billion USD in 2020. Was a 5% drop from the previous year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So today in my pitch, I would like to highlight on the value of R&D investment today as a contributions to the water sector of the high social priorities. So Yokogawa Electric Corporation has much national workforce outside Japan, Asia, Europe, US, Middle East, and other regions can be involved in the direct business to the overseas business owners. This is a great benefit. The global network provides a general services window to the handle inquiries and troubles related to the customer systems and equipments. It enables to dive into the global business opportunities utilizing these business bases. Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, then the measurement and connecting technologies represent Yokogawa's origins. We make use of the background technologies, for example, field instrument and programmable logic controllers and data acquisitions, information services, servers. In today's pitch, I present successful business campaign in United States. I would like to highlight on the collaboration between public water utilities and the private company using these original technology of Yokogawa. So water stress, this defined as general defined as by water supply capacity against water demand. Increasing populations and decreasing precipitation bring higher water stress due to water shortage. Southwest to southeast in the United States facing worse droughts in recorded history. In particular, Los Angeles is struggling with depletion of Colorado River. This is a major water resources. The climate change brings impacts on less rainfall, snowfall along Colorado River basins. The water shortage and depressions have been suggested to be connected to the very frequent wildfire in California. So this is one of the solutions. The Los Angeles will recycle 100% of city's wastewater by 2035. The both wastewater and wastewater treatment facilities and advanced water purification facilities functions to produce potable water from wastewater. The stepwise, the water treatment system attenuate human waste and risk, the health risk, organic compounds and nutrients by wastewater treatment. The particle and the pathogens by ultrafiltration or microfiltration membrane, and chemical compounds and salts by RO membrane, and trace chemicals compounds by UV with advanced oxidation systems. So these contaminants are removed and controlled by engineered buffer and wastewater transforms to be potable. The wastewater is recycled, but utilities do not always have proper knowledge and experiences in the mechanical complexity. In addition, need to get less operation cost efforts. So our collaboration with public and private R&D efforts is very effective to clarify the user concerns and difficulty at planning phases. The cloud technology make it possible to carry a demonstration study even though the difficult situations COVID-19 in 2019-2020. While our R&D team stay in Tokyo, get stream of data from wastewater treatment plant in Southern California and calculate the best manipulated value with AI and machine learning and get back to the dashboard as operator requested. So our AI Apple data-driven, we call it data-driven modeling for optimization, gave a manipulated airflow rate in terms of better performance and saving energy. So this is one of the slides to the promotions Yokoga Cloud offers. Secure connectivity to get data from different data sources with Google's AWS or Office 365, and seamless exchange data of connected system and exchange of data between AI Apple in connected system architectures preferred by the users. So as a result, AI and machine learning run on Yokoga Cloud resulted in energy saving at least 10%, maximum 24% in our test. And this should give direct benefit to the users. And also the public and private collaboration effort received a prestigious award for transformational innovations from Wastewater Association 2022 in United States. So it is important for private company to make their own investment in the issues of high social priority and to balance this with business potential. So thank you for attention. I like to highlight on that value and importance of private sector lead R&D with end users. Thank you for attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Matsui, for your nice talk about the water reuse project in the United States. Okay, so yeah, I have several questions I'd like to ask, but let's discuss later. And I'd like to invite Dr. Matsubara.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Matsui, would you turn off your presentation? Thank you very much. So my name is Matsubara. Thank you for introduction, Dr. Hashimoto. My name is, I'm Matsubara from Nihon Suido Consultants Corporation. This is a very unique company where our business field is design and the construction of the water supply and sanitation. And I'm doing my business in the water supply fields in developing countries. So today my topic is about the COVID-19 crisis response and lessons learned in water sanitation and hygiene sectors. So today I'd like to introduce a research project we did with JICA. The project name is the Lesson Learned from Response to COVID Crisis, with the same as the research topic. Then we targeted the developing countries in Japan, how the water utilities and the water sectors respond to the COVID-19 and how it was affected and how we could cooperate with that countries. So the full report is available both in English and Japanese language from here. And the research really actually covered extensive contents like hand washing and the sector-wide approach and the informal settlement problems. But today I'd like to focus on the water utilities because the water utilities are the key player who plays a role to sustain in the water supply as a safely managed drinking water services. So this is a summary list of the challenges and necessary cooperation for water utilities. So there are three challenges, the major challenges that I'd like to introduce. The first challenge is the water service problem. So the one is the sub problem is about the ensure business continuity. They have forced to operate under the very limited personnel conditions due to the lockdowns or some. Then they need to ensure the quality and quantity during such limited personnel. And then, so this is a common challenge, and the possible solutions was identified to have a business continuity plan that the most of the Japanese utility had. and to establish a workflow under limited conditions, and also the monitoring system for water quantity and quality. The actual situation in developing countries is that no one knows the flow rate of the water supply systems, and like it's connected to the Dr. Matsu's presentation, we need some advanced monitoring for that systems so that we can comprehend and control the water systems. Then the second is the financial sustainability. So the water utility is like a company, as you may know, that they need to operate based on their revenue from the water tariff. But many of the water utilities experienced a significant water tariff decrease under the COVID-19. Then that revenue decrease seriously damaged some water utilities to operate the water supply systems. So water funding facilities, including government subsidies, are necessary, and long-term investment planning support is necessary. And another thing is a kind of public welfare and a safeguard, and proper measures in the vulnerable group support and hygiene awareness. So those are kind of purely public welfare, but the water utilities are kind of the company need to focus on. And it was very visible that the water utilities are kind of bearing such a public health functions for the publics. So let's focus on the sustainability of the water utility. Then when we do a water supply project and program under JICA, we always use this growth spiral model. Growth spiral means that we invest water utilities. Then after that, then the customers will increase. Then the customers increase, the tariff revenue increase. Then the tariff revenue increase, we need to make an efficient management. Then based on that revenue, we invest more. So this is a kind of the spiral, making the cycle to increase the water supply services. Then, but this model, based on this model, we assume that no significant external shocks. Then the COVID-19 was a very significant shocks that affected growth spirals. Then some, for example, the degradation of the services. So the some utilities doesn't have enough money to buy chemicals like chlorine, and then stop the putting chlorine to the water supply system. So the JICA needs to supply that materials for them. So this kind of the dropout cycle from the cycle was observed during the system. Then international cooperation needs to prevent that systems. And from my field, the efficiency matters. So the one of the key things is the efficiency to prevent the system. So no one can trust the water supply system without efficiency. We are wasting most of the water to the fields, and no one can invest on it, and no one wants to pay a tariff for that. So I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. So key messages is the COVID unveiled the financial vulnerability of risk of water utility. We prevent from the growth spiral utility dropping out, and enhancing utility is one of the key to sustainable services. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Matsubara, for your talk. Okay, so we'd like to move on to the discussion with two panelists, Dr. Matsui and Dr. Matsubara. So first of all, I'd like to ask Dr. Matsui about the Yokoga Electric company is doing business worldwide and seem to be a multinational corporation, as you showed in your slides. And it's very much advantageous to doing a global business. But on the other hand, the water business, water supply, wastewater treatment, or water reuse is somehow localized business. And of course, the technology is universal. And then the COVID-19 must have a significant impact on the Yokoga's global business, I guess. So how do you overcome such kind of global and local issues around the water infrastructure or water business associated with COVID-19?
Okay, think not so easy to link to the COVID-19's situation, but can say that now is a company cannot survive if environmental and social responsibilities are not adequately taken into considerations in the business. But balance between business and social significance are very important concept. So in particular, the water recycling and water reuse and portable reuse are very in the infrastructures a keyword for the sustainable water supply in urban nations. So in probably the US case is a very typical and advanced case.
Mm-hmm.
So however, starting from the California state, it should be getting spread out to the different regions, Singapore and the Asian Pacific regions. So then the point is how to get the successful result in the California or in United States. So reason why now as a first step, we focus on our workforce into this project in United States.
Okay, so then in the project, the success that Yokogawa's data-driven modeling for optimization is one of the key methods. So that kind of digitalization in the water sector is very important.
Yeah, that's right. So as I said, the engineers buffers and the environment buffers. So both concept needs huge investment, not so easy to, as you know, adapt in general water utilities. So I believe that digital transformations, digital solutions make it easier in terms of visualize the performance and visualize how water quality is safe. Get more reliables. It means that can reduce less dependency on the, as you know, environment buffers and engineered buffers.
Buffer.
Yes, I think. So reason why I focus on highlight on the digital buffer using AI and machine learning.
I can understand. Very nice. Yes, digital buffer is a nice keyword. Thank you very much. Okay, so then I'd like to ask Dr. Matsubawa. So yeah, efficiency is important. Yes. Then so here in the developing country cases, so the non-revenue water is the main key factor for the efficiency. Is it correct?
For example, my case in Rwanda is really correct because the most of the 40% of the water is wasted in the field, and actually they cannot get the water fully for the operational expenses. So that is one key performance indicator, but that such a kind of the KPI should be set city by city, so that they can show how the utility improve the performances. Then the important thing is that their financial and water management should be established. Then everyone wants to pay for water. Everyone wants to invest for water. So this is my key message.
So the key factor for the efficiency, improving the efficiency is different.
Yes, different city by city, but non-revenue water is one common thing that we can tackle with. Thank you.
Okay, I see. Okay, so yeah, many things to ask, but the time's up. So, but yeah, actually, we invited two panelists from the private sector. Then yes, one is the water reuse project in the United States, the developed countries. Then the digitalization or introduction of digital tools is one of the key factors. Then on the other hand, in developing countries, so yeah, the efficiency is very important. And the efficiency is not only by the like non-revenue water, but other key performance indicator is important and to achieve the water SDGs. Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Matsui and Dr. Matsubawa. Okay, so we'd like to move on to the next session. So I'd like to hand the chair to the Dr. Gisa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hashimoto Sensei. So let us start our session. So hello everyone and good afternoon from Tokyo. So welcome to the session, Role of Science and Education Dialogue Achieving SDG in the COVID-19 Crisis. My name is Gita Mohan. I'm a research fellow working at the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability. So I'm very pleased to be the moderator of today's session, particularly on role of science in education. So before starting the session, I would like to share a quick info about the outline of the session. So we have three interesting presentations delivering by three distinguished speakers, Dr. Jackie Liu from UNU-IAS, Professor Tamarad Kotatup from Asian Institute of Technology, and Professor Kumiko Oguma from the University of Tokyo. So each panelist makes a presentation for 5 minutes, so please keep on time. So all these three presentations, after these presentations, we will have a question and answer session. So due to the time limit, we may take the selected questions from the floor or from the moderator. So the participants, please post your questions or comments in the chat box. So thank you very much once again. Without any further delay, I would like to request Dr. Jackie Liu, please make your presentation. Please, Dr. Jackie.
Thank you, Dr. Gita. Let me share the screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Liu. I'm a postdoc researcher from UNU-IAS and the University of Tokyo. I'm here to share some of the recent research findings from scientific communities on water surveillance, water quality, and monitoring under COVID-19. There is an increasing realization among the scientific communities that we are not able to test every individual for COVID-19 because the logistical cost will be so high. So this is the reason why the surveillance of wastewater came into the place. Wastewater has a rich source of biological and chemical information that's related to public health. For example, many diseases causing pathogens, including SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus causing COVID-19, is detectable in domestic wastewater at very low level. So this table is summarizing the different countries have already detected COVID-19 in domestic wastewaters. Although the possibility of COVID-19 transmission via wastewater networks is not yet firmly demonstrated, but scientific communities are trying to develop wastewater-based surveillance as a very good indicator or early warning tools for us to better predict and prevent widespread of COVID-19 in urban cities, especially where the population is highly concentrated. The scientific communities are also very much interested in what is the impacts of COVID-19 on the quality of our water environment. Here is a table summarizing the water monitoring data reported from different countries. So these solid squares are indicating the improvement of water quality, while these empty squares indicating degradation of water quality in their country. So as we can see, most of the reports are showing improvement of water quality during COVID-19. This is because many countries locked down the cities. And during this period, many industries suspended their activities and traffic travels were largely restricted. So those reduced in human activities actually reduce the pollution load to the water environment. And this is a map that I would like to share with you that showing the changes of water quality at the global scale from different countries. As you can see, many of the countries are reporting decrease of pollution levels indicated by these downward arrows in many countries, except for some coastal regions and several surface water reservoirs are showing increasing pollution levels. Another very interesting point for scientific communities to think about is how human activities, human behaviors has been changed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. One example is water quality monitoring activities. So here is an example of Ontario in Canada, there are about 1.2 million people depend their water supply on private water supplies. So basically private groundwater wells. So different from public water supplies, the owners of those wells are responsible for testing and managing the water quality from their wells. So as a regular routine, the owners will send water samples to the local water quality testing centers. So this graph is showing the horizontal axis is the timeline, where the vertical axis is total number of water sample tested. So we can see there is a sharp drop of total number of water sampled since the lockdown issued in March 2020. So this decrease in water monitoring activities could have raised the higher risks of waterborne diseases, especially at that period. The medical service is already under too much pressure to deal with COVID-19 pandemic. So the implication is that we have to carefully think about how can we manage water resources, especially considering the changes in human behaviors and some of the new lifestyles due to COVID-19 outbreak, and as well as in the post-COVID-19 era. So I think one key to achieve SDG 6 under COVID-19 is certainly the collaboration among science and education sectors, private sectors, and international organizations. So this is the end of my talk. Thank you very much. I'll give it back to you, Dr. Gita.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jackie, for the excellent presentation, particularly to emphasize the impacts of the COVID-19 on surface water pollution and global water quality variation during pandemic. And also you, highlight the detection of source COVID-2 in urban wastewater. So I think we have some questions, but we would like to ask the end of the session. So now I would like to move on to the next presentation. So now I would like to invite Professor Thammarat from Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand, to deliver his presentation. Please, Professor Thammarat.
Thank you very much, Gita. That's a very introduction. I'd just like to highlight a bit that one of the problems during the COVID-19, in particular to the SDG 6, is about that the hidden disaster coming up together with that sanitation. So I'd like to have a talk on the case study with the safely managed sanitation focused on the SDG 6.2. So I think in the first sessions, we have heard about that safely managed sanitation, but globally, we now having a challenge of about 3.6 billion people having no safely managed sanitation, and then many is happening in the developing countries in Asia, in Africa, and many other regions. So within the 8 years time from now on, how do we do? How do we deal with that? And then of course, the COVID-19 will not be only one. I guess it would be many other emerging diseases together with that, come together with the sanitations. So I think that the solution in the past, we have talked about toilets, we have talked about basic sanitation, but the question should be that this kind of system, like providing enough toilets, clean septic tank or sewerage, that together with that certain part of the treatment system, whether it is enough or not enough to call for the safely managed sanitations. In addition to that, we may have these kind of issues happening around the developing country, the sanitation workers who have to do a kind of emptying service for the toilets. And then what next? After having the emptying services, what about the sludge to be thrown away or to dispose into the environment, into the surface water, or even to that the canals? So the way forward, the way that we have done on the measuring the progress in sanitation seems to be not sufficient. At MDG, we just talked about the containment. SDG, we have a bit more values to the sanitation chain, starting from the emptying, transport, and treatment. But in the developing countries, how do we do with that complete sewer network, with the treatment plant, or we should have said that by having the mechanical emptying services and then transfer to the treatment plants. One of the big issues is that how should we arrange and manage the treatment plant that for the sludge from the toilet system. Then just briefly explain to you about the sanitation in Thailand. We have said that we achieved MDG 10-15 years ago, and then we successfully installed several treatment plants, but only 30% of the wastewater collected, it is sending to the wastewater treatment system, whereas the sludge, the emptying sludge from the tap, from the toilets by the truck, it is more than 90% collect, but without any treatment. So that's why it is not a very good data to show you here, because the UNICEF and many others, GMP, they said that, well, within the Asia Pacific region, Thailand is one of the latest country that may not be able to achieve SDG 6.2, which is very kind of an embarrassing figures that 10-15 years ago we did nicely for the toilet provisions, but not recently for the safely managed sanitation. Then I would propose that once we need to be more innovative, in particular to the research, in particular to the innovation development. We need to understand what are the sanitation technologies or management systems that we can do better. Our team in AAT that we would like to propose to understand the market, to understand the technologies, and then we can offer the better solution for the people. Like we have the solar septic tank, the cyclone tube toilets, and the cestofit that we try to transfer these technologies to the market through the industrial partners. And then in addition to that, I think the previous speakers have talked about that wastewater-based epidemiologies that we can use this kind of understanding to predict or to having a kind of an early warning system of the COVID-19 and other diseases, in particular for the water-based, waterborne diseases. So I think that would be the future for us. But if you have no wastewater treatment system, if you have no wastewater collection system, what to do? So that's why I think the sanitation should be more addressed, as in particular to the developing country, that we need more enabling environment. And for sure, I'd like to propose here that from the role of science and education to achieve SDG 6, we need to provide appropriate policy intervention together with that the capacity and capability buildings. I would propose as well that instead of only the wastewater-based epidemiologies, but why not we think about that the sanitation-based epidemiologies that in our countries having no collection system, having no silver-share system, how should we do if we have to rely on that the toilets sludge and then thrown away somehow? If you would like to do that, that could be a good tools for decision makers. And of course, I would wish to think about that once we have the research outputs, why don't we transfer to the public or private industry? Thank you very much, Mr. Kita.
Thank you very much, Professor Tamrat, for the great presentation. Yeah, it is very important to understand the significant safety management, sanitation solutions and limitations to achieve SDG 6, particularly under this COVID-19 crisis. So yeah, without further delay, so I would like to move on for the next presentation. So I would like to request Professor Kumiko Oguma from the Department of Urban Engineering, the University of Tokyo, to deliver his presentation. Please, Professor.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Hi, everyone. This is Kumiko Oguma, the University of Tokyo, and I'm going to talk about based on this title and try to make my presentation as quick as possible. So I'd like to address that the water for hand washing and hygiene has been somehow highlighted under COVID. And hand washing is, of course, a vital measure to avoid transmission of infectious diseases. However, around 40% of the world's population, it accounts for 3 billion people, do not really have a hand washing facility with water and soap at home. Here, this paper is a kind of shock for myself. It shows the inequality in access to hand washing water and soap in sub-Saharan African countries. So on the left-hand side figure, you may note that, of course, we see some gap among countries, and even more than that, we can see the big difference between urban and rural populations. And if we see the right-hand side figures, it's even more shocking. We see a very big gap between poor and rich people. And in such way, the inequality to access to safe drinking water has long been a big issue. Of course, we learned about that. However, now, due to the COVID, the concerns are now expanded to hand washing and hygiene water. That's what I really wanted to address today. And in line with that, somehow related to hand washing water, let me just briefly introduce my project, which was conducted in the Philippines, which is on the island of the great remote island to supply the safe drinking and hand washing water for the residents. It's related to water, so it's SDG 6, of course, and also closely related to several other goals. So the island I'm talking about is named Panabolon Island, which is totally off the grid and very remote from the cities. And there we conducted some questionnaire survey to ask the residents what kind of water they do drink. And we noted that over 80% of the residents rely on groundwater. So groundwater is a very important resource for them. And it looks like this. So as you can see on the left top photo, the water is not necessarily clean, or actually it looks so terrible. And when we ask the residents, they say this happens sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And once this happens, they do not really drink that water, still use that water for washing hands and dishes. So we conducted preliminary survey of coliform detection in the groundwater samples and noted quite severe fecal contamination in those groundwaters, which was again used for washing purposes. And this island does not really have sure systems, so the human fecal contamination to groundwater resource is very much highly suspected. And in addition to that, I believe those guys are other potential sources of fecal contamination to groundwater resources. So in line with the science and education for this topic, let me mention this one. In the Philippines project, we have launched some collaboration with the local people to promote some education activities. We started collaboration with local government, local residents, local primary school, local high school, and local university. So on this photo, I'm there, by the way, and I gave some lectures for the high school students to show the data and explain what is wrong with their water and what they can do as a measure. In this way, I believe the public participation and appropriate education, or the word education may sound a bit so serious, but I would say even just the information sharing would do in some ways, and those factors should be the key to mitigate water issues. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Guma, for the excellent presentation on highlighting the water issues, particularly in access to water in sub-Saharan Africa under COVID-19. So yeah, I think we have a very limited time. So I would quickly like to ask, starting from Professor Guma. So for implementation of a solar powered UV-led water disinfection system, so how much investment is required? So is these communities can manage the cost of maintenance and technology issues?
Well, that is really an issue. For the research project, we brought everything with us and went there and started some installation and showed how to do that. And then we tried to find the local people who can somehow do the maintenance as a business. and run the operation by themselves. That is very much important for the sustainability out there. I don't really want to leave the project ending when I leave and it ends. That means nothing. So I really wanted to involve the local people to run it by themselves.
Oh, thank you very much. So now my question to Professor Thammarat. So what type of policy interventions are needed, can easily implement by the government or communities to enhance the capacity of safety management sanitation solutions? And how it could be minimize the limitations to particularly 6.2, I mean, hygiene and sanitation?
Yes, if we talk about the policy intervention, it may need another 2 hours to talk about that.
Just a quick example, probably. Yeah, quick example. Yeah.
I think the most difficult part would be that how can we address the issue of that the sanitation can cause more diseases to the people, to the society, rather than just provide the toilets as a sake of that. Well, we just like to meet the MDG or SDG, but if it is proof, have evidence proof that this is causing more diseases, like in Thailand, we still have many people having diarrhea because we just have good toilets but no treatment system yet. That's what I would like to propose.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Jackie, I mean, when I saw your presentation, you did a lot of literature, right? So I would like to ask a question that, I mean, what are the risks of the transmission of COVID-19 in drinking water and its distribution systems? So can you provide some quick examples? So what you found in your literature?
So what I learned from those literature is transmission from
transmission of COVID-19 in drinking water. Yeah.
Yes, it's not yet demonstrated or verified. We still need a lot of research efforts on that, try to understand whether this water can really transmit COVID-19. And if it is verified, then we need to think about what are the proper disinfection technologies that, for wastewater and also drinking water supplies to secure the safety.
Yeah.
Yes.
So once again, thank you very much. We almost like beyond the time. So I would like to close the end of the session. So thank you very much, Dr. Jackie and Professor Thammarat and Professor Oguma for your active participation and nice presentation. So now I would like to hand over the next moderatorship to Dr. Park Jongwi. Please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gita Mohan. My name is Chonghee Park, and I'm the head of Innovation Education Program at UNU-IAS. I'm very much honored to moderate this session at the World Water Day Webinar 2022, especially to delve into the roles of international organization in achieving SDG 6. And I'm really honored to have 3 esteemed experts. Mr. Ryo Hada is the officer in charge in Economic, Social, Cultural Rights section at the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and he's leading the thematic area of economic and social rights, including human rights to water and sanitation. Ms. Kaoru Takahashi is the Secretary General of Water Aid Japan, a non-profit organization dedicated to providing clean water and hygiene practices for developing countries all around the world. Finally, Dr. Sadhana Shrestha is a JSPS UNU postdoc fellow and an environmental health and analyst with very much extensive research experiences in water and health. Today's session, actually, we were planning to have 20-minute session, but because of the time prolonged, we have very much limited time. And I believe one of our experts, Mr. Ryo Hada, has to leave for another World Water Day event in Dubai. So I hope we can actually cover as much as we can, as we prepared a lot actually for this session. For today's session on the roles of international organizations achieving SDG 6, we will have mainly 2 rounds of dialogue. We hope that this session is more like a dialogue rather than a presentation session. So first round, we'll start with the common question for all 3 panelists. And the second round would be more individual question. For audience, if you have any question, please feel free to leave your question in Q&A, and then we will try to answer your question as much as possible. Let me begin the first round by asking all the panelists a common question to give us a brief intro of your organization and the statement on what your organization is currently focusing on and prioritizing on achieving SDG 6 in 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Mr. Hada, Rio Hada, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Park. So I represent the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We're the lead UN entity on human rights, a key pillar of the United Nations, along with peace and security and sustainable development. 12 years ago, the UN General Assembly formally recognized that water and sanitation are fundamental human rights. So we work with governments and all stakeholders to promote the practical realization of these rights and integrating human rights in efforts to implement the SDG 6. And we work very closely with UN agencies and partners under the framework called UN Water, which is a unique coordination mechanism to tackle the water crisis and to support global and country efforts to monitor and accelerate progress on the SDG 6. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to Ms. Kaoru.
Yeah, thank you so much for your introduction. So, yeah, my name is Kaoru Takahashi, Executive Director of WaterAid Japan. And let me introduce our organization first. So WaterAid is an international NGO established in the UK in 1981. So our vision is to make clean water, decent toilets, and good hygiene normal for everyone, everywhere within a generation. So we work in 28 countries, especially working with the poorest and the most marginalized people in those countries. And last month, actually, so we launched the 10-year global strategy. So I think this is a good opportunity for me to introduce a bit of our strategy. In that strategy, we identified 4 aims in the strategy, and just I don't think we have enough time to explain 4 aims. So let me pick up one of them. So to achieve one of the aims is to achieve universal and sustainable access to water, sanitation, and hygiene in focused geographic areas to influence wider change. It means we identify focused districts and towns, work with local government there, and identify systematic barriers to achieve universal access to water, sanitation, hygiene in that area, and design and implement a project to eliminate the barriers to achieve universal access to water, sanitation, and hygiene in that focus areas. Then we demonstrate the approach we take and the impact of the project as a model to encourage the government to replicate the model to other districts and the towns. And as a result, we believe that it will be possible to achieve SDGs Goal 6. And we think that this would be one of the most effective way to achieve SDG Goal 6. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaoru. So we now listen to Mr. Hada and Ms. Kaoru from like international organization perspective, as well as national NGO perspective, how to actually implement at the local level, at the country level in the real time. Now we are moving on to our researcher, actually, what would be her role in the UNU-IAS as a research fellow. Sorry, I think you are muted, Dr. Shustak. Okay.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I belong to UNU-IAS, especially the Water and Resource Management team. UNU-IAS is established in 2014 as one of the academic and research arms of the United Nations, stationed in Tokyo, Japan. It is dedicated to realizing a sustainable future for people. UNU-IAS serves the international community by producing evidence-based knowledge and solutions to inform policymakers and by addressing priority issues of the United Nations system. It has 4 thematic areas: governance for sustainable development, biodiversity and society, water and resource management, and innovation and education. Among them, the research focus of Water and Resource Management team, which is our team, is closely aligned with today's topic.
Our team is now in the process of wrapping up a 4-year project, Water for Sustainable Development. The project established a framework to comprehensively evaluate the role of water in Asian cities, develop tools to investigate the association between water use, pollution discharge, and economic sectors, as well as analyze the intersectoral relationship, and provided policy options to achieve sustainable development in Asian countries. The SDG targets that are central to this project are 6.3, which is improve water quality, 6.4, increase water use efficiency, and 6.5, integrated water resource management. The project outcomes provided information on direct and indirect water consumption of all sectors and help to understand the water stress. The outcomes will assist policymakers in developing a monitoring plan for efficient water use. They will enable water planners to make rational choices between alternative actions. The outcomes emphasize the necessity to evaluate the indirect involvement of sectors in water pollution, and also advocated for planning sector-specific pollution control measures. That is all about the introduction and our recent work related with SDG 6 in UNU-IAS. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shrestha. So now we hear from all three of our panels on their priority areas of the organization, what they have prioritized and focusing on in terms of achieving SDG 6. So Mr. Rio, for your particular position as a officer in charge at UNO-IASThis, from a UN perspective, what is the challenges you see that interfere the progress toward SDG 6? And what should be done to resolve these kind of difficulties and challenges?
Thank you. Well, I see inequality is one of the biggest challenges. If water is a human right, everybody should be entitled to have access to safe drinking water in sufficient quantity and quality. But the reality is that 3 in 10 people in the world have no access to safe drinking water. 6 in 10 lack safely managed sanitation services. So if people cannot enjoy their right to water, they cannot enjoy the right to life and all other human rights. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the fore that the existing inequalities in access to water and sanitation can aggravate the risks for infection and death from the pandemic. And limited access to water and poor sanitation can lead to a vicious cycle of increased risks to infection, serious health outcomes, and poor living conditions. So in building back better from the pandemic, we need to tackle the widespread inequalities and discrimination that has made some people more vulnerable than the others. And to do this, we need to identify who are impacted the most from the pandemic, using disaggregated data, identify challenges, root causes of discrimination, and actions needed to address them. And ensuring the meaningful participation of all stakeholders, particularly those marginalized, is very important. I'll give you an example. In Nairobi, our office conducted an assessment of the right to water in slums and informal settlements. And that process of assessment included interviews and focus group discussions with communities. This enabled the communities to express their priorities, participate in shaping the implementation of SDG 6, and to ensure that their rights are respected. This is a practical example of what is needed to accelerate progress on the ground, because our latest analysis shows that governments must increase their efforts by 4 times in order to get SDG 6 on track. 2 years ago, UN Water launched the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework to mobilize actions across governments. And currently, we are focusing on preparing for the UN 2023 Water Conference next year, which will be the most important water conference in a generation. This will be a critical moment, not only for the water sector, but for everyone working in sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hada. I cannot agree more with you on this importance of local stakeholder engagement in implementing and identifying the challenges, and implementing the right policy and plan. So the 2023 Water Conference, we are all looking forward to learning more about this development of the conference probably in the next few months from your office. Now we are moving on to Ms. Kaoru. I learned that your organization has done a lot of support to developing countries to provide clean water and hygiene practices for everyone. What would be the unique strength or advantage as an NGO like yours in providing such direct support to the countries?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So as Mr. had mentioned, also inequalities and the marginalized people is the area which we need to work for. And then we have a lot of experience in working with those people. So yeah, lack of access to water, sanitation, hygiene is often compounded by discrimination, existing inequalities, such as like a community in remote rural areas, people living in urban slums, marginalized group because of ethnicity, race, caste, people with disability. So those people find it really difficult to access to clean water, sanitation, hygiene, even if wash infrastructure is built in the area where they live. In order to make sure those people have access to water, sanitation, and hygiene, one of the example is that we promote accessible facility design. So for example, we developed accessible hand washing facilities to make sure that persons with disability could wash their hands to protect themselves from COVID-19. And also in the community level, where we work, we make sure different groups such as girls, women, persons with disability actively participate in planning process of our project, and also community meetings, so that their needs and voices would be effectively reflected to the project and the community planning. And we also work with like local government or water service providers to strengthen their capacity and skills such as data collection and analysis, so that the government and the water service provider could be aware of the needs of those marginalized community and address their needs. And the second point is that as we work on the ground, we are able to influence decision makers by demonstrating evidence-based solutions. So as I explained at the beginning, so basically we implement a project in the focus areas, and we demonstrate that case to influence the government to duplicate that model. So the reason why we can do that is that because we have both that function, like implement a project in the community on the ground, and also we have a function of like research and advocacy. So for example, if lack of the data, such as like a functionality of water supply system or location of supply system is one of the barriers to achieve the SDGs Goal 6, then we implement a project to introduce a data collection system and train the local institution government for better data collection and encourage the district government to use the data for like a budgeting and the planning. And then if it works well, then we demonstrate that impact widely to encourage the district government or even national government to duplicate that approach. So we have both like a function, like a implement a project on the community and the influence. So this combination is also one of our uniqueness, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaoru. I think it's really, really a unique strength of NGO like yours to experiment some of the promising practices and then scale up if it has a very good result at the national level. So this is a great strength that an NGO can have and can offer. So now we are moving on to Dr. Shrestha. So can you introduce your current research at the UNU-IAS as a water and health expert in terms of achieving SDG 6?
Thank you so much, Sensei. Hearing wonderful experience from Takashi Sensei just now, and knowing that WaterAid has been working in my country, Nepal, since 1987 to bring clean water, decent toilets, and good hygiene in remote areas, I would like to share my previous experience on working for SDG Target 6.1, access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. Safely managed drinking water service is defined as the water source located in premises, available when needed, and free from contamination. Use of safely managed drinking water service is a key indicator for this target.
And according to UNICEF and WHO, 65% of the population that use safely managed drinking water has been using sources other than piped water, such as shallow groundwater, as explained by Oki Sensei at the beginning of this webinar. My PhD thesis was on analysis of microbial pollution in shallow groundwater and its health impact in Nepal. That research work identified the presence of pathogens in shallow groundwater. The risk of diarrhea exceeded the acceptable level as defined by US EPA. And also it revealed that risk of diarrhea was significantly higher among groundwater users who did not have access to piped water supply. So these outcomes suggested that the indicator safely managed drinking water service of this target should be used cautiously and assessed carefully. Now, my ongoing research in UNU-IAS is on the relationship between water reallocation and sustainable agricultural livelihood in a peri-urban area of a city which is rapidly urbanizing due to socio-political development and due to massively flourishing international and internal tourism. With increasing urbanization in city areas, peri-urban areas also grow in population and in infrastructural development. The water demand thus increases and new water consumers emerge who compete for water resources with pre-existing farmers that leads to irrigation water scarcity. This creates conflict and also impacts agricultural productivity and livelihood. So in our research, we have planned to analyze the impact of water scarcity on farmers' livelihood. The research is related with SDG Target 6.5, Integrated Water Resource Management, and Target 6.4, Increase Water Use Efficiency loosely. One of the outcomes we found is that within a small administrative boundary, there existed dissimilarity in the irrigation water management system, which led to higher crop yield and reduced water stress in water-rich areas, whereas poor crop yield and increased water stress in water-poor areas. So our outcomes recommend improvement in water distribution by improving irrigation water management for maximizing agricultural productivity and economy. And our outcomes, we hope, also suggest for formulating strategies and policies for water suppliers, resource managers, and government authorities responsible for equitable water management at the local level. And since this research is ongoing, I'm not being able to share with you all the results and the recommendation. So I'm sorry for this limitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Listening to all three panelists, I could hear a few keywords actually. So across all three panelists. So what I learned from the session actually is, if I can say three things. So inequality in water is still remain really strongly. So how we can actually remove the barriers to the access to the equal right to the water and sanitation is still very much a key. To solve this issue, we need to engage more community and multi-stakeholders. So it's really important to listen to all these stakeholders and community in planning and implementing our plan. And finally, the importance of research and data-driven interventions for all the difficulties that we are facing. So those are the three keywords that I can summarize our session. We are actually over the time. I see one question actually from the Q&A about the how will the United Nations ensure that the developed nations support countries in Sub-Saharan Africa and East Asia despite promises and no actions? So this is a big question. I guess we can ask the Secretariat to relay this question to our panelist, Mr. Hada, who had to leave for another session for another World Water Day event. So with that, I would conclude this session and thank you very much for your active and very meaningful sharing, Ms. Kaoru and Dr. Shrestha, for this session. Thank you very much. I will hand it over to the Ms. Yoshinaga.
Thank you very much for nicely concluding this session, Dr. Park, and thank you very much for all the participants and panelists for attending this webinar. At the end of the session, when you close the webinar, there is a small pop-up questionnaires if you would able to cooperate. We will be very appreciative. We hope that the webinar was useful for everyone, and thank you very much again for their participation, and wish you have a nice day. This is a close. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.